You thought he was done? You thought the takes were too hot to handle? You better think again. He's back with even more scorching opinions, more controversial predictions, and the kind of truth bombs that only Zain Bando can deliver. If you missed the first round, prepare yourself. This is the follow-up you've been waiting for. It's time for Zain Zinger Part 2, another certified hit from the Empty the Bench Network. Here's your host, Zain Bando.
All right, we are live. It is Zain Zinger Part 2. My name is Zain Bando. It is Saturday afternoon. It's Saturday, December 27th. Thank you to the 14 people who are already in here. It's good to be back. We're doing this a little bit differently because tomorrow I head to Nashville for the Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl. That is Illinois versus Tennessee from Nissan Stadium. Illinois looking for its ninth win of the season. It would cap off another successful season for Bret Bielema and company. So I'm very, very excited to be able to bring you guys this today. It's been a pretty busy December, if you will, as we get closer and closer into the new year. But to start off, we have the college football playoff quarterfinals preview. We have some pretty good matchups that we're going to be discussing, and as well as what we're going to be discussing in Forever Power 5, which premieres on Monday night. But to start, though, we have a few that are very interesting, and I wanted to start with the big one. It's the elephant in the room. It's Indiana versus Ohio State from the Rose Bowl. Excuse me, Indiana versus Alabama from the Rose Bowl. Ohio State plays Miami in the Cotton Bowl. But nonetheless, I'm very excited for this one simply because it's a accumulation or a culmination, rather, of a story that I think is very unique because you obviously have the AP Coach of the Year in Kurt Cignetti against an Alabama team that has clearly shown that it can turn things around on a whim under Kalen DeBoer. So I'm excited for that one. They're actually my national championship runner-up in the Hoosiers against Ohio State, which means I love Ohio State to beat the Miami Hurricanes simply because I think a 100% healthy Jeremiah Smith is a dangerous one. And I think he's one to behold for sure because when his quad is fully healthy, he's one of the most dangerous receivers in the country, and I think that'll be a very interesting game. Miami defensively, though, is quite tough considering that they gave Marcel Reed his most difficult game this past week. And then the other quarterfinal matchup that I think has a chance to be good is Ole Miss versus Georgia, simply because there's a lot of stakes in that one. It was supposed to be Lane Kiffin commanding the sidelines for Ole Miss. Instead, it's Pete Golding, and of course, taking on one of the best coaches in America in Kirby Smart. So I think all of these matchups have a chance to be really good. But the big takeaway that I wanted to get out of this was the quarterfinals, I think, are what's wrong with the college football playoff system. For one, I think if these games were on campus, more people would be interested simply because I think if you were to get a home field advantage environment in Columbus, that always rocks. And then, of course, if you were to get a game in Bloomington, a CFP game. It would be the most widely attended game in Indiana football history, but to get the backdrop of the Rose Bowl doesn't hurt either. And so overall, I'm really excited for all of these games, but I just hope that by the end of the weekend, my national championship pick remains alive, which I think it more than likely will. Then the other game, of course, that I haven't mentioned, Oregon versus Texas Tech, I think is a chance to be a great game as well. I think it'll be really good. But let's move on now, though, to my NFL Week 17 survivor pick. So as you guys know, in the pro football pick'em category of things, we've done quite well. We have 150 plus wins for the season with a couple weeks to go. I will give you my survivors for Bando's Blitz tomorrow, but we will go through the whole slate. There is a question. Actually, that's a spam. I'm not going to read that, but nonetheless, though, here are my Week 17 picks. Without further ado, here we go. By the way, we're up 231 points in the overall group leaders category, 156 points overall. That's a 231 point increase. All right, so far we're 2-1. We were 2-1 on the Christmas Day slate. And then coming up in about an hour and a half, 4:30 Eastern, we like the Chargers over the Texans. And even though the Packers and Ravens are a little bit shaky, I like the Packers to get the job done over Baltimore. I like Cincinnati over Arizona, Pittsburgh over Cleveland, New Orleans over Tennessee, Jacksonville over Indianapolis, Tampa Bay over Miami, New England over the Jets, Carolina over Seattle, the Giants over the Raiders in the Tank Bowl, even though that could go either way. I like the Bills over the Eagles, the 49ers over the Bears, just because historically the Bears don't usually win in San Francisco. So I think the NFC North division title will have to wait another week. And I like the Rams over the Atlanta Falcons. So far we have 2 points in the books for the NFL this week. We're hoping to make it a huge week by the end of the weekend, and we're hoping to continue on a nice run predictions-wise in the NFL near the end of the regular season as the playoffs get closer. Just to give you guys some pick distribution numbers, 90% of the Yahoo Sports community picked the Cowboys to beat the Commanders, while 94% were burned by the Lions losing to the Vikings, while 96% took Denver over Kansas City. Some other notable percentages. There's a general consensus across the country that Pittsburgh will beat the Cleveland Browns. That's 93% to 7%. A close race in a battle between two very inconsistent teams. New Orleans and Tennessee, 52% to 48%. Jacksonville, 87% to 13%. Tampa Bay, 93% to 7%. And then to give you one more, which I think is staggering, the LA Chargers, or LA Rams, rather, 97% to 3% over the Atlanta Falcons. So those are my Week 17 and if those survivors to kind of preview and take a look at, because I think most of these games are interesting. There's some playoff implications overall, though, but I do think it'll be a solid week, and I think it'll be very interesting. Moving over to the game I will be in attendance for, the Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl. That is Illinois taking on Tennessee. Kickoff for that game is on Tuesday, December 30th at 5:30 Eastern from Nissan Stadium. I may have a surprise for you guys before that game. More details on that to come. But the stakes of this game are pretty simple. Illinois has a chance to create a record for itself, to win the most games in a 4-year period since, I believe, 1989 to around 1991. So that's very, very exciting for Bret Bielema and his crew. The good news is that Luke Altmaier is back in the saddle for his final college football game ever. So that'll be really, really exciting to see him suit up one more time. I was a little nervous that he wasn't going to be able to do so, and I was a little worried that it was going to have to be Carson Boyd or somebody else, or even Ethan Hampton, who has not gotten significant playing time in an Illinois uniform. So I'm excited about that. The major opt-out for Illinois is Gabe Akis, while the major opt-out for Tennessee is in the receiving corps. I think it's Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously Tennessee has an interim defensive coordinator, so that certainly helps Illinois' cause as well. So just something to bear in mind too, that I think Illinois has the advantage going forward, and I just simply think Bret Bielema right now is a better coach and has a better handle on his program as well. So I'm excited for the game again. 5:30 Eastern, Illinois, Tennessee. Illinois trying to shoot for a 9-win season. It was a 10-win season this past year over South Carolina. Back-to-back bowl appearances for Illinois for the first time under Bret Bielema. And the end of an era for a senior class that's done a lot of good things. Obviously, 2023, they didn't go to a bowl game, but pretty much every single year besides that has been a success. So I'm excited to see how this team finishes the year. Tennessee is a good team. They have a good quarterback as well. It's not Nico Iamaleava, it's Joey Aguilar. So, there's a chance the game could be high scoring. I did have it at 38-31, but that remains to be seen as well. That could change as we get closer to kickoff, but nonetheless, looking forward to it, and stay tuned for that aforementioned surprise that I talked about earlier. All right, and the final topic that I have for you guys this afternoon is pretty simple. Was Anthony Joshua right about Jake Paul? And what I simply mean about that is simply the pre-fight build-up. So, in a nutshell, Anthony Joshua basically said that this was too big of a step up in competition for Jake Paul. Obviously, that ended up being proven true because there was a 6th-round TKO win for Anthony Joshua, the former 2-time unified heavyweight champion. And what I think this fight showed, and I discussed it in my analysis column last week that was posted on, I think, Field Level Media and a bunch of other syndicates, is that it was one of those fights where you didn't know what version of Jake Paul you were going to get. And I see a lot of people saying, oh, he didn't deserve to hang 6 rounds with the 2-time heavyweight champion. Most people would not have done what he did. So I think you have to give him credit there to start, number one, and number two. When you get hit by a real heavyweight, that's usually bad news. And what makes it even crazier is, simply put, like it was a viral finish. It was on Netflix, so everybody saw it. But I think the big thing is that, sometimes when you go into a sport that you don't have a whole lot of experience in, and you're fighting guys who simply aren't boxers, it's not going to really do you any good when you go from one level of competition where you're fighting a near retired MMA fighter versus someone who is legitimate in what they do and actually knows what they're doing a little bit, just in terms of just what a pure boxer looks like. So I think overall he was right about him, and I think he made it look pretty simple in that regard. And I think overall it was just a decent fight. It could have been better, but it was one of those fights where you kind of looked at it and you go, well, it kind of is what it is. So there's that as well. But that's going to do it, though, for Zain Zinger Part 2. One final reminder, if you missed this episode, Zain Zinger Part 2, you could catch today's episode replay on YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and X everywhere. That would be my YouTube channel, Zain Bando 99, the ETB Network YouTube channel, the Kick channels that we have set up, as well as the Twitch channels as well. So with that being said, that's it for me. You're going to get Between the Ropes with Christy Wilson in about an hour to an hour and a half or so. So don't miss that. And don't miss all the on-site coverage from Nashville. And until next time, I will see you guys soon. Have a good one.